Welcome everyone back to ScreenFish Radio. I am so excited to have you here this week as we are entering into the danger zone to talk about Top Gun Maverick. And this week we have brought in a couple of top of the class aviators with us. Dave Voigt from In the Seats and Richard Crouse from everything. From Pop Life on CTV. And many other places. Thank you both so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, boss.
Anytime. For those who are unaware, Top Gun Maverick takes place after more than 30 years after the original epic, when Pete Maverick Mitchell is called out of retirement and back to where he belongs in the Top Gun program, where he is asked to train a detachment of graduates for a special assignment, but he must confront the ghosts of his past and his deepest fears, culminating in a mission that demands the ultimate sacrifice from those who choose to fly it. Top Gun Maverick is directed by Joseph Kosinski and stars Jennifer Connelly, Miles Teller, and of course, Tom Cruise. As always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But gentlemen, I am very excited to talk about this one with you. What did you think of Top Gun Maverick?
I liked it. I think it's one of the sort of great way to kick off the summer movie going experience. I guess Doctor Strange really did that a couple of weeks ago, but this really feels like the first real summer movie of the year so far. It is predictable. I think it's kind of by the book, but it doesn't really matter because of the aerial sequences I think are so strong. And I like that Tom Cruise, who is 59 years old, although looks like he's 39 years old, but the character has some age on him now. He has regrets. There's a past. He's still a hotshot, but unlike the first film, there's no... or there's more emotional connection to things and characters and sort of the events that are swirling around him. So for me, the movie, which is, I was going to say it deepens it. This movie is about as deep as a lunch tray, really, but it is nonetheless a little deeper simply because of the fact that 36 years have gone by and there's a history there that Cruise brings forward to the character.
No, and I mean, it really is great because it's one of those things where, I mean, even early on in the film, it does make a point of highlighting that, okay, he's been flying by the seat of his pants for 36 years, and maybe that rope is starting to run out. And I mean, and that's really the whole crux of the thing. And I mean, giving Cruise this character giving him, like you said, age, and it gives it more weight, and it makes it more relatable. It makes this guy sort of, he's still the hotshot Maverick, quote unquote, but he is looking back and going, boy, is this all I've done?
Yeah. And is there any more to this?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, and I like that sort of sense of ruefulness. And we're making this movie sound way more serious than it actually is. But I did like this sense of ruefulness that he brings to it. And there's a romance, which I think is probably the weakest part of the film. But at least that sort of sets up some sort of character traits for Maverick, which take him outside of the cockpit. And I think that's important in a movie like this.
And you know what? But I mean, at least from that angle, like we said, I do think the romance is probably the weakest, but at least they're shoehorning in existing characters. They're trying, like the entire script is incredibly well written as it references back to the original movie really seamlessly. And I mean, I think for fans going in from the original, like there will be so many little beats and notes that will make this sort of impossible not to enjoy. You know, even aside from all the aerial stuff, which is just amazing. And I mean, I think the reality is that this is going to be the film that gets the casual cinema viewer back in the theater.
Yeah,
like
I think the casual
3-4 times a year, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the casual and maybe even older, the cinema goer, the theaters are having a tough time getting older people back. But if you were 20 when Top Gun came out and you loved it and went and saw it over and over again, cut to 36 years later, chances are good you probably want to see this. And if you're going to see it, you have to see it on the big screen. This movie, it'll be fine once it hits streaming, although Cruise says he wants to wait like at least 4 months before it hits streaming. So people are going to have to wait a while. He wants it to be exclusive to theaters, and you should see it there. See it as big and loud as you can. And I think that it will get an audience of a certain age who have been avoiding theaters after the pandemic to take the risk and go back and check out the last movie star, Tom Cruise, in a movie that he was sort of meant to make, I think.
No, but you're right. They're not going to push this to streaming or disc anytime before the fall. They're going to ride this out in the theaters as long as they humanly can.
Yeah.
Which will be interesting because theatrical moviegoers are different than they once were. You know, it's so heavy in that opening weekend. Repeat viewing, it's just not as common. I mean, we do see it. Like you said, a movie like Spider-Man: No Way Home doesn't make over $1 billion or whatever ridiculous amount of money it was by one-time viewing, but it is less common in so many ways. But this is absolutely not something you want to watch on your phone. It feels wrong, actually, in so many ways. It really was surprisingly good. I thought it was surprisingly enjoyable. The first one, I would love to know for you both, like the first one, what is the legacy of the first one for you? Because here we are 35 years later, and we're coming in with a sequel to a movie which everybody references.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the closest thing we've ever had to a sequel was Days of Thunder, which was almost beat for beat the original Top Gun. It was just on the road. But I would love to know for you, like, what is the legacy of Top Gun?
Well, really, the legacy for me, I mean, it's Tom, because this is the movie that sort of took him from, young, cute movie star to sort of superstar, and sort of everything that he has done ever since. Like this is the one where we were introduced to the spectacle that he knows how to bring. And I mean, he learned from Bruckheimer and Simpson, and he learned from so many of these other people to the movies that we're getting now. I mean, this was sort of the formative moment for him for every big, massive piece of spectacle cinema that he's done ever since. And I mean, as much as we love to make fun of him, the guy is a student of the game. And I mean, this is where his education really started.
Yeah, I agree. This is the film that turned him into the movie star that we see today. And I called him the last movie star earlier, and I'll stand by that. I mean, there's not that many people that you can guarantee will have a lineup on opening day.
Yeah.
Now, Cruise chooses carefully. His titles seem to have a sense of deja vu about them often. So there's a lot of Mission Impossibles. Top Gun is back here now. Things that have real built-in brand accessibility, but they also happen to star him, and they make a lot of money. And I think people know what to expect when they go see a Tom Cruise movie like this. They expect that the stunts are going to be practical, i.e. that means that real people actually did them and not just computer generated avatars or people standing in front of a green screen, that they're going to feel a little different. And Top Gun absolutely feels stunt wise a little different than other films that we've seen that tend to rely really heavily on a lot of trickery to pull off the stunts. So we know when we go see a Tom Cruise movie that not only is Tom Cruise going to be in it, but it's going to feel a little different than the action movies that we're used to seeing. And I think people want that. I think people tire of just these giant CGI spectacles. And when you do see something like Top Gun, that G-force looks pretty real to me in those scenes, and that makes a difference. Feels different. It is more visceral. It is something that the audience, I think, is willing to pay for.
Well, and he's refined the process too, because I mean, especially in the past 10, 12 years,
Mm-hmm.
he's found his collaborators, like with Chris McQuarrie for Mission Impossible and Joseph Kosinski here for this.
Chris McQuarrie co-wrote this as well.
McQuarrie was later to the process. They brought in McQuarrie. My understanding is that like this film's been in development for many years, and there was a large gap taken in the filming. I don't know if you guys know that or not. I'm assuming you would, but. And my understanding was McQuarrie was brought in afterwards.
It was for a few rewrites,
to polish it. And McQuarrie, I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I don't know if I did.
No, go ahead.
I think McQuarrie is one of those people that has perfected the art of telling a story during an action scene. That is so hard to do.
Mhm.
A lot of people tell the story, then have the action scene. But McQuarrie, as we've seen, and I mean, the Mission Impossible films have really become what he's more known for. I think. Like, I don't know any other McQuarrie films other than I'm sure there are, other than the Mission Impossibles. But each fight scene, each epic stunt feels like it's relevant. And
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that Tom Cruise and McQuarrie are sort of a muse for one another. They seem to work tremendously well together and understand the kinds of movies that they want to make, and the envelope pushing that it takes to keep creating something new and that feels a little different. I don't know how many Mission Impossible movies there are now. There's at least 5 or 6 of them, and by the time you get out to the 5th or 6th movie in a series like that, they should be old hat. We should be, we're in Jaws the Revenge territory, typically speaking.
For sure, exactly. Yeah.
But we're not with those films because they keep pushing it time after time, and that only comes, I think, with big money because the films do very well, but also a great collaboration between 2 artists who really truly understand what the other wants.
Yeah, and I mean, they first worked together on Jack Reacher, so obviously that was 2012. So obviously things have grown from there.
Yeah,
and I mean, just to reference it back to even just everything that we saw in Top Gun, I think one of the things that really stood out for me was, I mean, obviously the aerial sequences are jaw-dropping. They are amazing. And the actors are actually in the jets.
Yeah.
But guess what? Like, they're actually acting while they're being thrown around in these jets. To me, that was the impressive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, I can't imagine how many takes it would have been in case Miles Teller was losing his lunch or if somebody else was freaking out, no, depending on what they were doing, right?
I mean, I guess that is always the nature of it. But yeah, I mean, what it needs though in those scenes is for it to look relatively effortless. In those scenes, if you see the acting, then the stunt is ruined, I think, and you don't see it in these scenes.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
I've heard some wild stories that they'd have 14-hour days and come away with a minute and a half of footage, and I believe it. Because I mean, you would have to continue. Like, there's first of all a limited amount of time that you can actually shoot that anyway, for all the setup that it would require. But you're right, you have to hit those beats. It was funny. My wife and I were talking this morning, and she said, "Did you hear how much it's supposed to have cost to rent the jets?" I said, and she said it's supposed to cost $11,000 an hour.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem worth it. I said, "Yep." We've decided we're going to work out our problems, because that is the thing. That's the magic of this film to me, is the practical effects. It is so wonderful to me to sit there and watch these things happen, and know that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need Tom Cruise to be the one in the nosedive spiraling around them, necessarily, but I need to know that he's been in these planes. I need to know that the planes are doing it, and that it's not happening in a lab.
Yeah.
There's a different feel.
Yeah, no, you definitely, as I said earlier, you definitely get that in this movie. And I think that's what Cruise promises for each of these action films that he makes and what he delivers time after time.
And I mean, it's a sense of spectacle that has been lost in Hollywood, if only because of the prohibitive amounts of money that these things cost. Because I mean, if you think, even go back to something like the spectacle of Ben-Hur back in the day, that wasn't CGI. It's like, no, somebody died while they were shooting the chariot race. You know what I mean? We have lost those kind of days. And while obviously we hope nobody dies in a fighter jet while shooting Top Gun,
right,
this is kind of akin to that, where it's like we're getting the sense of spectacle back, like actual in-camera spectacle.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, and it's just unbelievable to watch on the screen. Like, I like, Richard, that you just said that the film is about as deep as would you say, an oven tray?
As a lunch tray, yeah. It is. And there's not much to this movie. In terms of the story is told well. But it's essentially beat for beat. It's the original Top Gun.
For sure.
there's different characters placed in different sections of the story. Crouse is playing, obviously an older, more authority figure, but Hangman is essentially Maverick. This is not a brilliant reimagining of David Mamet didn't step in to write the screenplay for this and imbue it with layers of meaning. I mean, what you want here is what I thought was, or what we've been given here is what I thought was kind of an old-fashioned movie that feels like it came from the 1980s. I mean, the stunts and things are modern, absolutely, but the storytelling is very much of the time when the original Top Gun came out. And I don't want to give anything away, but when Jennifer Connelly is leaning up against the little sports car, that is a scene that could be in any number of a dozen movies from 1985 alone. So, this is a movie that plays well with the nostalgia aspect of what it tries to do, updates the stunts a little bit, but don't come to this looking to give your brain a workout, because you're probably not going to get that unless I'm missing some huge subtext that is woven through this. I don't think it's there, and I don't think really, particularly in this case, think it needs to be there. As I said, the rueful aspect of it, absolutely great, gives the character some more depth, gives Tom Cruise something to really work with this time around. But the story is kind of predictable and beat for beat what you would expect it to be. You've got John Hamm as the absolutely joyless admiral that is ordering Cruise around. His character doesn't have an arc. It's more like a straight line with a little, there's not a great deal here that's going to challenge you, but it's spectacle. And it's a summer movie, and this is what we expect from these summer movies, or at least one this summer. I want just to go and just be blown away by the sheer power of it. It's loud, it's proud, and sometimes that's enough when you go to the movies.
And I mean, I will say, we are all three jaded moviegoers who've done this way too often over the course of our lives, but I mean, it only took me about 5-10 minutes in to be like very aware of how the story was manipulating us as an audience. And I just didn't give a damn. And I mean, that's kind of why it works, because there is this joyful nostalgia element to it all, which you get wrapped up in. And
I think that it's interesting when we talk about nostalgia, because this is an exercise in nostalgia. And, this movie, I think, was meant to be released before the pandemic.
It was, yeah.
I think it's interesting that it wasn't. And I'll tell you why, because Tom Cruise didn't want it released, to theaters that were, half full. And I don't blame him. But during the pandemic, we have learned a number of things about ourselves. And one of the things that we learned is that when, things are odd and feel off, that we generally tend to gravitate towards something that feels familiar. Yeah. And Seinfeld all of a sudden is one of the #1 streaming shows. Frasier, all these sort of comfort foods, the meatloaf of entertainment from the 80s and 90s became very popular again, because people knew what to expect. They weren't going to be tremendously challenged by it, but above all, they were going to be entertained by it. And in the case of releasing this just after the pandemic, as people are trickling back into theaters and trying to decide whether to wear a mask when they walk down the street or not, whatever it is, then you go to see a movie like Top Gun Maverick, and it's got that nostalgic appeal. It's something new, but it feels like it's not going to really challenge you and make you have to jump through a bunch of hoops. It is simply there for one reason, and that is to give you an amazing time at the movies. And it works on that level. It absolutely works.
It does that and then some, for sure.
Well, you guys have brought up an interesting point there, and certainly with the nostalgia and whatnot. What do you need? What do you need from a legacy sequel? Because, like you said, it's been 35 years. This feels like a film from 1985, but it, interestingly to me, the storytelling felt like it was 1985, but it still felt had some modern sensibilities about it. And so I was just wondering, in general, what you need from a legacy sequel.
And I mean, I wouldn't say modern, but I would say aged. That might be a more.
Yeah.
It was recognition that characters that we've embraced and loved and use as you said, Richard, as our meatloaf from time to time, have aged and gotten older, and that's okay. And sometimes the meatloaf will taste a little different, but it's still going to be meatloaf.
Yeah, for me, legacy sequels, I there's not a lot of them that I would, be thrilled about revisiting over and over again. In this case, I just think that the movie delivers on its promise, and that's, I think, all you can really ask from a legacy sequel. I mean, we could try and break it down. Do you bring back all the original characters? Do you, how do you deal with the death of a character, of an actor? Do you acknowledge that that character ever existed? Do you start with the funeral maybe and work backwards from it? I don't know. I would prefer to see new movies with new characters and sort of more interesting ideas. But if you have to have legacy sequels, you may as well do it like this.
Yeah, that's interesting because there aren't a lot of legacy sequels that I would say really really succeed. And like to me, I forgive me, I'm late to the Top Gun game. I just didn't see it. Nobody showed it to me when I was young. They just never. I was at the time when it came out. I was like 8, 9 years old. My parents didn't take me. My friends never said, "Let's watch Top Gun."
Right.
So I saw it maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I thought, "Oh man, like this is a ride. It's a ride." But I wasn't there clamoring, saying, "Why didn't we get more Maverick?"
Yeah, I saw it once, I think, in the theater when it came out, and I'm sure probably, at some point since then, but it wasn't a go-to for me. My wife, on the other hand, has seen it 45 times probably. And so, her brother was a fan, and it was just on a lot. It's different strokes for different folks. But for me, it was a movie that enjoyable enough at the time, but it was not a film that I necessarily was clamoring for a second part to. But now that it's here, I'm all right with it.
And I mean, when it comes down to just sequels in general, I mean, the whole crux of a sequel, no matter what the movie, is just, trying to repeat the beats from the original with some kind of variation.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, some succeed, most don't. This succeeds exceptionally well, if anything, because of the fact that this is really a fantastic example of execution, of how to do it and how to do it right, and not sort of, if we had shoehorned Maverick into sort of fighting in a different war, or Maverick's, taking tour guide,
Yeah.
flying tour groups around around the Grand Canyon or something, it would have just been horrible.
Or maybe it would be great. Like, here's the thing about legacies. What I have come to understand is that nobody really knows anything. And so if you gave me a story about Maverick, and he's a tour guide in a helicopter taking tourists around the Grand Canyon, and then something happens that he's got to automatically shift back into Maverick mode, maybe outrageous, possibly, but maybe it might be a little bit of fun. I will never discourage sort of to imagination, and at least trying to push the envelope a little bit on these things. This one plays it a bit safe, but it works. But it does play it pretty safe.
Well, when you're spending, what is it, $400 million plus? I don't blame them.
Yeah. And then letting it sit around for 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, and this sort of goes back, I think, to what we were talking about before. I think the things, like, you look at a Mission Impossible franchise, and like you said, I mean, they shouldn't be good at number 6. They shouldn't be something that you look forward to the next one, knowing that it's the same crew. It's the same team. Literally, I think Ving Rhames has been in every one of them.
Good for Ving Rhames. I would love a gig like that. You don't work that much, probably making pretty good money.
I don't know what else he's done, but he's doing mission. Like he did a few in the early days, and now he's just doing Mission Impossible. But the thing is that Cruise, I think Cruise in many ways has become like a Jackie Chan type character. Like, you generally want to know not about his character, you just want to see if he's going to live through the process.
I think character plays into it as well. Above all, though, I mean, I just think he's a movie star. He's someone who understands, how to be on screen, how to deliver what audiences want, and whether you like him or not in his personal life. And there's a lot of talk about everything to do with him when he's not in front of a movie camera. To me, is kind of immaterial when I'm watching the movies. And here's a guy who understands the medium and understands that. I interviewed him once for one of the Mission Impossible movies. I can't remember which one. And I was in Toronto. He flew in, and he had flown to 6 cities that day to do press. And he was just hopping. And he had just, he'd started in London or something, flew and went to New York, Boston, whatever, and ended up in Toronto. Here's a guy that understood that this kind of big spectacle, even in the promotion. I'm doing 6 or 8 cities a day, flying around the world to promote this thing, kicking this off at the Cannes Film Festival. I mean, if there was ever a film less likely to play at the Cannes Film Festival, I'm not sure what it is. I mean, although the Cannes Festival is interesting because it's a mix of high and low art, but I mean, this is not a film festival film, except that when you insert the world's last movie star into the middle of it, who's willing to do press, sure, we'll give him an honorary Palme d'Or. Sure, we'll have jets flying over the theater while the movie is playing on the red carpet and that kind of thing. So, I mean, he understands all of the aspects of what it means to get one of these things up and running, promote it, and get it into theaters. And he's one of the few with the clout to say, I want this in the theaters for 145 days before anyone has a chance to watch it on DVD or streaming or whatever it is. I can't think of another movie star that could make that demand. Maybe Will Smith a few years ago, but I'm not even sure that that's true, particularly after the events of the last Oscars anymore.
And I mean, even with Tom, like, he's always had a very keen sense of the characters that he can play.
Yeah.
I mean, from the Jerry Maguires to working with P.T. Anderson and Magnolia, and even something like Tropic Thunder, he would not have taken the part if he didn't know he was going to kill it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, he's always had a very keen sense of when he's read a script to go, yeah, I can knock this one out of the park. People will remember this one, and he's, for the most part, with a couple of exceptions, done it every single time.
Yeah. He had a weird little run there with movies like Valkyrie and the one with Meryl Streep, whatever that was called, something for Lions.
Oh, the Robert Redford one, Lion for Lambs.
Yeah. He had a bit of the doldrums there, but I think that was a moment when he was trying to push the envelope and really do something different in his career in between these big action movies, and they didn't take. And listen, his track record is better than 99% of everybody else's. So the odd dud here and there, probably it's a blip. Doesn't matter.
No one's going to remember the Mummy remake. They're going to remember every single Mission Impossible movie. That's every single Top Gun movie. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah, his career was interesting because he had that little turn there around the time of War of the Worlds, the Katie Holmes couch jumping and all that stuff. And that was just around the time, I guess YouTube was big then, but it was sort of like early 2000s, if I remember correctly. And he was a running joke. People didn't want to see his stuff, but then he sort of just went back to being Tom Cruise. It was interesting. Like no one remembers that. It's like we all just want to sit back and
I do think people remember it. It comes up online and that sort of thing, but I think it just, again, it can't be overstated, how much he understands how to be a movie star.
Yeah.
and just how the business works and what needs to be done. He has probably a very expensive team around him and, the best publicist in the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, he's a one-man corporation where he is the product and the CEO and everything else, but he understands it. He gets it. He knows how to do this. And, for a lot of other people, that couch jumping on the Oprah show probably would not have been survivable. in terms of career moves. But for some reason, he was able to transcend that. It took a little while, but he was able to transcend that. And now he's going to have, probably with this movie, he and Doctor Strange will battle it out. Maverick and Doctor Strange will battle it out for the highest gross of the year, because this Top Gun movie is going to make a fortune, I think.
No, absolutely. And I mean, he does. It's one of those things where he understands how character can elevate the brand. Like, I mean, even when you look at something like Jack Reacher, that's not a $200 million movie.
No.
But he elevated it into that kind of a movie.
Yeah.
And everything he's been taking for the past 12 years, 10 years, has been stuff that he's either elevating into something big, or it just is something big.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. There's something, and it's funny, like, even in this film, like, it's amazing to me that he can still, like, we talked about weathered with age, but he can still flash a little bit of boyish charm in there. And I'm still watching it and I'm like, wow, like, just little smatterings. I mean, he's always sort of got this sort of charisma in that. I'm not talking about that, but I mean, there's moments like him and Jennifer Connelly where he does that little, you can still see the young Tom Cruise in there. And he
People
just
love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I was, whenever we do these podcasts, guys, I always like to try and ask what the film is really trying to say. I try and get beyond it. This film is very shallow. I'm not going to lie. This is not everything everywhere all at once. This is not.
It is a lunch tray. Yeah,
it's a lunch tray. It's a lunch tray, as we've said. But I would love for you, like, this film comes in a context. It comes in there. I was just wondering for you what the true enemy in Top Gun Maverick is, and within its shallow story.
I would say himself.
Yeah, himself, arrogance, age, arrogance, any number of self-inflicted wounds along the way, which is, I think, what I was talking about earlier about the rueful tone of some elements of this character. That's, for me, what it is. I mean, there's not that much, of anything with the new recruits, the 12 new recruits. They are, all impossibly good looking and have, attitudes to match. And really it all emanates from Cruise, and it's all about, this idea that, he's battling almost against himself and the decisions he's made.
And I mean, it's the old, I mean, I forget the exact quote, but I mean, it's the old adage that you just can't outrun time.
Yeah.
And I mean, this Pete Mitchell, Maverick, he's at the brink of that, going, I'm about to lose this race. And he knows it.
Yeah,
he needs to be in it. He has this compelling need to still be going as fast as he possibly can.
There's a great line in this where he's talking to, I think it's Ed Harris. It's in the opening of the film, and Ed Harris says to him that, you basically says that you can't outrun time or something to that effect. And he looks at him and he says, you're the last of a dying breed. You're going to expire. And he goes, but not today.
Yeah.
And I thought it's a great line.
Yeah, it is a good line, but then Ed Harris, pretty much disappears from the movie shortly after that, and the drone thing disappears from the movie after that, and all of a sudden it's a Top Gun movie again. It's a way of setting it up. But I and it was fine. Listen, I'll watch Ed Harris in anything. I was happy to see him, but those scenes, to me, didn't really add that much to the movie. It just sort of reestablished Maverick and his character and his sort of disdain for authority. But it gives you that, opening shot where I don't want to give anything away, but he goes very fast in an airplane, and it gives the film a chance to showcase that. But really, other than that, for me, that was just kind of an odd way to start this whole thing.
No, and I mean, if anything, I mean, as much as, the whole film themes around time and sort of pushing against that, there is such an overwhelming element of just this being, a testament to the fact that there are people who can't let technology take over.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, as a human being, you need to be able to push yourself to your limits. And to maybe get a little deeper philosophical, or sort of that quarter inch on the lunch tray that we're talking about, is just about sort of the human experience and sort of the willingness to push yourself as an individual.
Absolutely, and Maverick certainly, the character kind of embodies that. He does things that no one else will do, but then when there are further reaching consequences to his actions,
well, therein lies the rub.
Yeah, and so when he's not really sure how to handle the relationship with Rooster, because he's the son of Goose, who died when they were, in the original. There's a 36-year-old spoiler. Goose dies, and when Rooster, Rooster has something to prove, and Maverick says, "Well, listen, if I choose him for this mission, he may die, and if I don't choose him, he'll never forgive me." And so, you've got some semblance of character work there, and something a little deeper. But as soon as he says that, you can pretty much cast yourself forward in the story, and what's going to happen near the end of the film. So,
but old Maverick
no
says that, not young Maverick. You know what I mean? That's
that's old Maverick.
Yeah.
That would be the one thing that I would say about the film, and I'm not going to criticize it on this one, just because I think the movie's just a blast. But I think that not today comment. First of all, I think that's probably from an early rewrite, because I think it was supposed to focus more on the drones, and that's why it disappears entirely. But I could be wrong. But the other thing is, when it comes to his character, yes, I want to see him in that final mission, but at the same time, I went, oh man, like, we could have passed the torch. But can Tom Cruise pass a torch? Tom Cruise has to run with the torch. Like, but at the same time, I thought you're training all these people, and then you have to do it yourself anyway.
Yeah. But they all have an element of something to do. By the time we get to the end, if they do another one of these, and I kind of hope that they don't, to be honest with you. I think part of the thing that makes this thing fun and kind of special is that there's this 36-year gap between them, and that we're getting to revisit this character at a very specific time in his life. I don't know that I need a whole lot more of this. The further adventures of Maverick don't really interest me that much, and I didn't find any of the other characters overly compelling. I don't need to spend time with any of them in future sequels. I hope this is a kind of one and done, and just like, let's just leave it here with no torch passing, because I don't need that from this set of characters. This movie satisfies every itch that I ever had to scratch about Top Gun.
Both films really have the same message. At the end of the day, you need your wingman, you need your team.
Yeah.
It's true. I am afraid that we're going to get Top Gun 3, although I would be okay with it if they wait another 36 years. Let's
nothing like seeing a 95-year-old Cruise behind the wheel of a plane.
Well, guys, this has been so much fun. Why don't we wrap it up? Let's screen it or skip it. Top Gun Maverick, screen it or skip it.
Richard.
Oh, absolutely screen it. Super fun, perfect summer movie. And it delivers on what you want, and not much more than that, but it gives you what you want.
See it big, see it loud.
Yeah.
See it with a big bucket of popcorn and lots of butter. Just do it.
Yeah, it's a screen it. It's a screen it. I think this is one of the most fun screen it's you're going to have this year. I really do.
Amen to that, for sure.
Guys, this has been a lot of fun. I know that you're tight on time. You got to go. But before you go, Richard, how can people connect with you?
Check out my website, richardcrouse.ca, or Twitter. It's all at Richard Crouse. It's all
the Twitter, the Facebook, he's everywhere.
Yeah. I'm not hard to find.
Excellent. And Dave?
Always, you can find us over at In the Seats, or if you want to listen to our podcast where we sit down and talk with other people like these two fine gentlemen, find us In the Seats with and all your favorite podcast providers.
I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. And a reminder that for you at home, You can find us wherever podcasts are available. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Podomatic, and if you go to the podcast page, you can ScreenFish.net. You can download Fishing for More. Small group questions to help get the conversation started for you, although, as we said, this is a lunch tray conversation in terms of this film. So it might only be one question in the...
that one's going on the poster.
That's it. But it is there to get you talking about the film. So, gentlemen, I do thank you once again, and for you at home. We started the conversation. This was ScreenFish.